What the keys are to mindset mastery are what I would say 3 top keys. The first one is awareness, because obviously if you don't know there's a problem, we can't deal with it. So being aware of it, which is why I'd say taking your thoughts captive and just saying, hold on, I just had this thought. Is this truth? Do I want to believe this? What exactly is going on in my mind? And if you're not really aware, like I know a lot of the listeners today are busy women who have a lot of responsibilities, that sometimes we don't allow ourselves a pause moment to actually think about what our mind is going through. So a great example is getting a pen and paper, little post-it notes or a little notepad or on your phone. Just jot it down, put it in your diary. Like, what am I thinking? What is this thing that just popped in my head? Because if you think about, if you have all these thoughts circling in your mind, you can't make sense of it. It's kind of like you're building up this excessive processing and your brain is doing a lot of work. So how you can help it, first of all, is by being aware of what's going on, by sort of what I call a brain dump. I'm sure how many of us have gone to bed and you can't fall asleep because your mind's going 100 miles an hour. Best thing to do is to write it down, commit it to paper, and then tell yourself, I'm going to sleep now. I will deal with this tomorrow. Now, the second tip that I always like to include about the pillars of mindset mastery is being intentional. We call this intentional thought creation. An example again. Say you have this thought about something that pops up. Like, let me use the example of one that's very common for women across all areas of life. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not good enough because of my education. Value and worth is one of the things that women question more so than men. And we have this, it tends to keep us hung up on a lot of things. So how can we be more intentional about that? So again, taking that thought, I'm not good enough, and writing that down and saying, how can I be more intentional about this? How can I flip it? What would be another opposite thought of I'm not good enough? Is I am good enough, I'm worthy, and I'm valuable. And I know it sounds like this isn't about standing in the front of the mirror and saying positive things to yourself. Again, it's being intentional about what you want to think. Because here's the truth, what you focus on grows. So if you're focusing on the negative, what we want to do is be intentional and just start to direct the ship to focus on the positive. Like, I'm going to get that position, I'm going to get the funding. You're going to start to think about the possibility of what it is and what that's going to feel like before you even get there. So intentionality is, well, I'm going to be successful when I do this. So you kind of just like a professional athlete. If you ever see them in the Olympics, they have their little earphones on and they're like doing their thing. They're actually creating intentional thoughts of going through the motions of what it's going to be like to do this task. They envision themselves at the end. So they're already putting themselves in the future while they're in the present. So then when they come back to the present and they just put to action, they're just rehearsing and just taking the steps of what they've rehearsed. So this is the power of intentionality. It's more than just goal setting, because goal setting is, I have this great goal, but oftentimes what happens is we feel like we can never live up to the goal. But if we can be more intentional about how do I become more of what I want to be, it helps our brain start to focus on those things. And then what happens is opportunities arise. All of a sudden you see things differently. You're like, wow, that's a great opportunity. If I go on that podcast, or if I send that person an email or go to that networking event, maybe I can then get the connections I want. And your brain starts to look for solutions. And then the third key, or the third pillar to mindset mastery, is action. We need to actually do things. Sitting and wishing, as far last time I checked, was not a strategy. There's no such thing as a wishing well. We actually need to be intentional with our thoughts, put into action, which means picking up the phone, taking the drive, deciding where you want to go. And sometimes it's the little things. It doesn't have to be this huge, major, demonstrative things of like, I'm going to move country. Well, I did that twice. I wouldn't advise doing that too often. But I added the intentional thought of why I needed to be there. So by putting the action, because here's the thing, going back to the car analogy, when you're stuck and you're not going anywhere, you're not going anywhere. But as soon as you start taking some kind of action, phoning the AA, getting the car out of the side of the road, doing something, even if it's the wrong thing, because I think so many of us, and women especially, have this fear of failure, because what are people going to think about me? And what are people going to, if I'm meant to live up to this reputation of always being successful, what if they find out I'm a hot mess? Well, newsflash, ding, 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 we're all a hot mess. We're just pretending it in different layers that we've got ourselves together. Because I said to my kids, I've got 2 adult kids, and I said, welcome to the club of adulting, where every day is guesswork, and every day is testing, and every day is experience and experiments, because that's what it is. It's experimenting and finding out what fits. But if we can adopt that attitude of, you know what, I'm just going to take action. If you think about the last time you made a choice, being stuck in indecision is the worst place to be. Where even if you make a choice, and you realize it's wrong, yay, you've made progress because now you know what not to do, which is just as important and powerful as knowing what to do. So again, just to recap, the three are, number one, the pillar is awareness. Number two is being intentional. And number three is taking action. And if you could take those three pillars and start to apply that to your life, you definitely will start to get on the road to mindset mastery. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe. Hit the little bell button so you'll be the first to know when we release a new episode.
Enjoy the rest of this episode at mamikakuni.com.